Card Player TV is here with David Singer, and we're going to talk about 7-card stud. First of all, thanks for coming by today, David.
Sure, it's my pleasure.
So I wanted to know, what is the biggest mistake that you think inexperienced 7-card stud players make?
There are a few mistakes that people make when they start playing. One is, I'd say, overvaluing small pocket pairs, calling raises with them. When you put the other guy in a bigger hand on a big pair, it's a big mistake. Playing small straight cards in a lot of situations is a big mistake. And another mistake is just calling with a big pair. Usually, you want to find out early on in the hand whether you have the best hand or not. Usually in stud, you want to play the best hand or the best draw. So start with a big pair or
and you want to play them aggressively?
You don't want to be playing a straight draw against a flush draw. Yeah, you want to play it aggressively. Say someone raises with a queen. If you have split jacks, most of the time you want to raise with the jacks and find out whether you're ahead or not. Calling with them is usually a mistake. But stud is different. It's a lot different than hold'em, where hold'em, the strategy would be the same whether you're playing a high limit game or a low limit game. Stud, the ante structure, in other words, the amount of the ante in regard to the first completion bet is different, so it changes. The smaller limit games usually favor tighter play, and in the bigger limit games you have to play more hands, otherwise you get ante to death.
That makes sense. Well, what about experienced stud players? Are there types of mistakes that you see them make?
I guess it depends on the particular experienced stud player. We all make different kinds of mistakes, but one of the biggest ones you can make is going to the hustler and playing the 4,000, 8,000 game.
So
a few years ago it was supposed to be a good game, but now it's usually pretty tough.
Tough game. So who would you say is the best stud player in the world right now, and what is it about their game that really impresses you?
Well, I don't play in the 4,000, 8,000 game, but I've played with most of those guys in a little bit lower games. I don't know who it is right now. Certainly Phil Ivey's one of the best. And
what is it about his game that makes you think that, or makes you say that?
Well, the same thing about his game. In all the other games, he's great at reading people, and he's super aggressive, and he usually knows exactly where he is in the hand. John Hennigan's another good one. David Oppenheim. There's a lot. Barry Greenstein's a good stud player.
Well, what about your stud game? What's the strongest aspect of it?
I like to think it's all around strong. But actually, I don't play that much stud anymore. I do consider it my best game. The first 5 or 6 years I played, I almost exclusively played stud, but now...
Why'd you switch over? Popularity?
Well, there aren't that many games. Yeah, the tournaments started getting so big, and then I used to come to the World Series just pretty much to play the 400, 800 stud game at the Bellagio every day, and now it usually doesn't even go. So just times have changed in poker due to TV.
Absolutely. How big a part of stud is bluffing?
It can make a big difference in the right situation, but...
Is it hard because it's limit? Or?
Yeah, obviously it's tougher to bluff in limit games than in no-limit games, but there are a lot of situations where you can bluff people.
So basic strategy question, should the lowest card in your hand always be higher than anybody else's door card? I've read that, and I didn't know if that's really stud strategy, if that's how players actually play in high-stakes stud game.
The lowest card in your hand should be higher than everyone's door card?
It seems a little restrictive to me.
No. Well, I mean, the more you play, the less you get away from the rules, but any hard and fast, everything is situational in poker anyway, but any hard and fast rule like that isn't good. If there are a whole bunch of people in, you might even want to, in certain situations, you might even play a small flush draw. Certainly you might play like 3, 4, 5 of spades, even if a whole bunch of big cards are in. So you can't really make a general rule like that.
Well, let's say you get to 4th Street, you only have one pair, and there's a bet. Is that you should be getting away from the hand at that point?
You should throw it away as quick as possible. No, it depends on the situation.
It depends on the situation?
It depends on the situation. You've got to read your opponent. You know, maybe it's an opponent who doesn't have anything. Maybe you have aces. Certainly your one pair is pretty good there. Yeah, it all depends on what's going on in the game and the situation, but you certainly can't make a rule like that.
Well,
and lots of times if you're in on 4th Street, usually you don't. If you're in on 3rd Street, more often you don't fold until 5th Street when the bet's double.
I've heard that instead you should always be looking for excuses to fold. What do you think about that statement?
I guess that might apply to the smallest ante structure games, for instance 10-20, where it's usually a 10% ante structure, but a high limit game is usually a 25% ante structure, so it encourages you to play a lot more hands. In 10-20, you should probably be looking for reasons to fold against decent opponents, I suppose.
What do you think is the most overrated piece of stud advice that you've ever heard?
That's a tough one. When you sit around a stud table, you do hear all kinds of sort of old wives' tales about stud, but I don't know. Like I said, a big mistake is people playing pocket pairs as though they're really good hands. A small pocket pair, you shouldn't be calling raises. You shouldn't be calling two raises with. I see a lot of people do that.
Okay. And what would be your best advice to an amateur if they came up to you and they said that they wanted the transition from hold'em to stud and they wanted a little bit of advice from you? What would you say?
What I recommend to people who ask me really is reading about it. I wouldn't go in. Some people are just naturally good at different forms of poker, but most people aren't that good at picking up games like that. I advise them to read books. One of the best books for low limit is the book I started out with was Roy West's book. I think it's called 52 or 50 Lessons in Stud, something like that. But anyway, it's the only book by Roy West, and the best.
And it really helped you.
It helped me a lot, yeah. To play small Ante Structure games, it's very good. Gives you the basics. And then David Sklansky has a really good book. Stud. It's called something like Stud for Advanced Players. It's very good. If you read those and study them, you could probably beat most games.
And that's worked for you. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you, Lizzie.
Lizzie Harrison with David Singer for Card Player TV.